Second World War. Captain Brown is a truly remarkable man. This is his story.
To achieve supersonic flight was the holy grail of aviation in my time. Here you had a new airplane, more power, more thrust, more aerodynamic refinement. I'd got down to 4,000 feet. Suddenly the aircraft went into a violent oscillation. I was beginning to lose consciousness. Gently together. My name is Captain Eric Brown. My last job was Chief Naval Test Pilot to the Fleet Air Arm. Was with my father. I would be about 10 years of age, much to my mother's absolute horror. I suppose she wanted to preserve her young son. I couldn't reach the rudder pedals. So it was just a gentle experience, if you like. But he had pressed the right button. I've always had in my life a tendency to try something hazardous. I was the only one at school that had a motorbike, a 500cc Norton. I used to make my summer money by being a motorbike rider on the Wall of Death. Then in 1936, the big event happened in my life that persuaded me to take up flying. My father had been a Royal Flying Corps pilot in World War I. The Germans had a Society of World War I Combatants. They decided to invite their opposition over to have a shindig during the Berlin Olympics in 1936.
Der 11. Olympiade neuer Zeitrechnung als eröffnet.
That was Herr Hitler announcing it open. Now they're all cheering him, and the whole crowd have raised their right arm.
The great event, of course, was the wonderful Jesse Owens. Here was a man who won 100 meters and 200 meters, the long jump, and the 4x100 meter relay. 4 gold medals, not exactly what Hitler with his Aryan ideals had wanted. I've read many stories that said Hitler ignored him. Now this is quite untrue because I actually witnessed Hitler shaking hands with Jesse Owens and congratulating him on what he had achieved. Ernst Udet became famous in World War I, the top-scoring pilot after Richthofen. He had many lady friends, cigar smoking, champagne drinking sort of chap, bigger than life. He said, now we're going flying, and I was in the front cockpit, he was in the rear. He took particular attention to strap me in very carefully. I thought, no, that's just how nice of him, but there was a purpose in it, as I found out. He really threw that thing around. He turned it inside out. We came into land, and on the approach, he turned it onto its back. I thought, well, he'll turn it over before. But nothing happened. He kept coming on, and I thought, really, I think the silly old fool's had a heart attack. And I really thought it was going to be my demise. But he turned it round, and it literally fell onto the runway. This is how good a pilot he was. He slapped me on the back and said, the German fighter pilot's greeting, Hals und Beinbruch. He said, you'll make a good fighter pilot. And he said, now do two things for me. Learn to speak German, and then learn to fly. It was a pivotal point in my life.
German troops made a formal entry into the demilitarized zone on the left bank of the Rhine. Herr Hitler confirmed the reoccupation of the Rhineland.
I had achieved the two things that Udet had challenged me to do. So I wrote him, and he said, yes, I'll book you into a little Gasthaus. We'll show you a bit of Berlin. I was, in my teens, politically naive. I really was just having a wonderful experience. It seemed a very vibrant country, lots of uniforms to be seen around. The Hitler Youth seemed to offer slightly more than the Boy Scouts offered, if you like to put it that way. Nuremberg was a rallying point. What's the biggest thing we do here? I suppose it was like the coronation with knobs on. The only thing that drove me to want to see it was curiosity. People said, oh, it's a fabulous show. You must go and see it. There are so many people packed into one place, all hugely enthusiastic.
Flink wie Windhunde, zäh wie Leder und hart wie Kruppstahl.
I began to wonder, how does this man attract all these people? I thought there must be some strange charisma. He's like the Pied Piper of Hamelin, and they're all following him as he rants along.
For the triumphs of Hitler, his annexation of Austria, the crushing of Czechoslovakia, it has been a year of crises and we can hardly ignore them. But it has also been the year of the Lambeth War, and we may be grateful to that dance phenomenon which has helped to preserve our sense of values. For even gas masks and ARP have been unable to still that undaunted oi!
A little group from the Foreign Office asked me if I was interested in joining the diplomatic corps. And I said I was, and they said, right, we will send you to Germany for 6 months. In early September, I decided to go up to Munich for a weekend and drive up in my car. On the 3rd of September, at about 6 in the morning, there was a thunderous knock on my door. 2 SS officers said, I have to tell you, you're under arrest because our 2 countries are at war. Now, technically, this was untrue because 11 o'clock was the time, but I wasn't in a strong position to argue.
The same hour that chimed for armistice tolls the signal for another war.
They took all clothes I had, books, etc., and off we went. I was in a little SS jail. I wasn't at all ill-treated. On the 3rd day, one young SS lieutenant came to me and said, we're taking you down to the Swiss frontier. When we arrived, the lieutenant said to me, you're free to go and you can take your car. So I said, you've taken my clothes, my books, my money. Why are you giving me my car? And he said in German, because we have no spares. Very Teutonic attitude.
Servitude and shame, whatever the cost and the agony may be.
I was taken to Bern, and the ambassador said, of course, I've been told to return you as soon as possible because you've been called up. I was keen to get back at the Germans. I was a bit piqued about being locked up. And I was young, raring to go. Suddenly on the notice board, there went a thing saying, the Navy have lost a lot of pilots. There is a shortage. And if you're interested in moving over to the Fleet Arm, append your name to the board. So I did that very thing.
Hundreds of planes, bombers, fighters. The RAF came and dove in, shouting the old hunting cry, tally-ho!
HMS Audacia originally was a banana boat operating in the Caribbean. Churchill was his original idea. He thought, right, cut everything off so that we can lay a flat flight deck on it to operate aircraft. The Wildcat, as the Americans called it, was an aircraft that had a bigger punch than the British aircraft of that time. Instead of .303 guns, it had .5 guns.
Far out in the grey Atlantic, the big Focke-Wulf bombers range far and wide across the ocean, seeking out the convoys approaching British shores.
The Courier was probably the most heavily armed German aircraft in the sky. It had machine guns firing out the side windows, cannon, 2 turrets on top, and a complete gondola underneath. All told, it was very heavily armed. Realizing what I was up against, I had studied this very carefully. Worked out how the guns could depress or elevate. There was only one black spot which they couldn't reach, and that was if you came in flat towards the pilot's cockpit. When I opened fire, we could see the windscreen just disintegrating, so the pilots must have been killed. You were in grave danger with colliding with your target, and you had to break away either up or down. You get that exhilarating feeling that you've nailed him.
The U-boats lie in waiting. Like wolves, they will stalk a convoy for days at a stretch, biding their time until the chance of wind and weather offers the fattest prize to their torpedoes.
We realized we were going to be under attack, so the captain of Adeste thought we'll zigzag at full speed for the night. A lone submarine let fly at us, caught the rudder. As we could to get away from the vessel. Turned round and she plunged down very rapidly. Tremendous booming as things imploded. There were a hell of a lot of people in the water, of course, by this time. Another pilot called out and he said, let's tie ourselves together. I think we were 24 altogether. Now at first we were all fine, we talked to each other and everything, but after about 3/4 of an hour, everybody stopped talking and falling asleep. These chaps were falling forward because there's nothing to support their heads, and were drowning. Of us left. And the Admiralty should make use of it. I got a telegram asking me to undertake a series of trials on various carriers.
Hellcat comes in too quickly.
Landing, one has to accept, is quite a hazardous business.
A firebrand bends on destruction.
Did you crash many times?
No, I only had one crash caused by a hook not lowering. As you go off on the catapult like you're doing here, you do get a pretty big kick in the pants. You are very hopeful that there's enough wind for you to get off cleanly.
The story of the DH-98, or Mosquito, is one of brilliant success. At the moment, the fastest aircraft in operation in the world.
The Mosquito is a superb airplane. I was asked to put it aboard an aircraft carrier. It was twice as heavy as any aircraft that had ever been landed on a carrier. Was twice as big. The top entry speed that we could land was 86 miles an hour. The stalling speed of the
V1, the flying bomb, the robot bomb, the buzz bomb. You're a passenger on a bus, and this is the end of your last trip. You're the man on the street, and you do what you can. You're an airman on leave, and this is your welcome mat.
While I was on duty, a V1 crashed in the garden of our house. The house collapsed like a pack of cards. My wife was concussed, and our cleaning lady lost an eye and had 96 stitches. Poor thing, she came out of it rather badly. The problem with attacking the V1 is it came over at a steady speed of 400 miles an hour. Even if you caught up with it and fired, the debris from it was likely to damage your own aircraft.
Between sorties, the pilots got together to discuss the best methods of attack.
We devised a method of flying alongside it and putting your wing under the V1's wing. Then if you raise your wing, you'll tilt the V1 over in the other direction, and then away it'll go. The best plane, I would say the Tempest 5. It had the speed to overtake. It was a pretty rugged airplane too, and it had the control to do the tipping. I was doing a series of trials, and the engine blew up, and the propeller went absolutely solid. I saw the engine was on fire outside. I didn't realize I was burning inside until my feet cooked. I realized that I had to get out. Bailing out is not as easy as many people think. And when I stood up in the cockpit to put my legs over the side, I was pinned back by sheer slipstream effect. So then what I did was get one leg over the side, one leg on the seat. Lean in, get hold of the stick, pull it hard over towards me, and that catapulted me out. You don't get much time to worry about the finer points of it. The thing is to get out and move out. In test flying, we had a high casualty rate. Year after year, 25% of the pilots involved in high-speed flight were lost. This was for a very great cause to keep our aircraft ahead of the enemy. It was them today, it might be me tomorrow. One just had to shrug it off and say, war is on, there are huge casualties, they are just part of the cost.
This is your victory. Victory of the cause of freedom is every day. We have never seen a greater day than this.
The director of the REE formed a mission to go to Germany after the capitulation and find out more about their technology. Airplane. It looks in body form like a shark, swept back wings and the underslung engines. It really looks power, power, power. When I got the Me-262 in the air, it was so fast, it was virtually untouchable. It had 4 30mm cannon, which is a huge punch. Batteries of rockets. I saw an American Marauder aircraft being attacked by an Me-262. 1 minute there was this beautiful looking Marauder in the sky, a minute later confetti. I've flown almost all the World War II aircraft, and I rank it as the most formidable aircraft of World War II.
Amid the
Hitler's right-hand man, head of the Luftwaffe. I was quite taken aback at how slimmed down from all the pictures I'd ever seen of him as a rather porky gentleman. The Americans had weaned him off drugs. They had stripped him of all insignia. He had been interrogated day in and day out. But the invigilating officer said to him, "Now you're going to be interrogated by a pilot." And literally, he brightened up instantly. The first question I asked him was, what in your opinion was the outcome of the Battle of Britain? And he said it was a draw. He said, if you look at the analysis of the battle, you will find that in the last week, for the first time, the German casualties were lower than the British. Now this is perfectly true if you look at the records. And he said this showed a turning point had been arrived at.
The jaws of the Nazi whale were set to swallow Jonah.
But he said, unfortunately, we couldn't continue because Hitler ordered all fighter units back for the invasion of Russia. I've told many people this, and nobody said, oh no, you got that wrong. Many of them are saying, my God, weren't we lucky? At the end, he came over and stuck his hand out to shake hands. Now, I couldn't, under any circumstances, shake hands. So I thought, the hell do I do now? And very quickly, I suddenly said to him, Hals und Beinbruch, the old fighter pilot's greeting. He half smiled and just dropped his hand.
What does Halserbeinbruch mean?
Broken neck and broken legs was the greeting. Go in there and do your stuff. Maybe that's what you'll get, but as long as you survive.
If you'll just answer my questions, we'll save a great deal of time. Concentration camps was one of the things you found immediately necessary upon coming to power, is it not?
Having been to Belsen, I realized that Goering had a huge responsibility for the concentration camps.
Your answer is yes, I take.
Yeah.
As the Allied procession moved onward,
the game was up. He didn't make excuses like I was obeying orders. He just said, you know, I had a job to do, and I did it.
Belsen's women, as savage as any of the men. Kramer's chief assistant, 21 years old and a veteran of 5 years of atrocities, is Fräulein Irma Graetze.
Irma Graetze, she was the female camp commandant at Auschwitz, had a dreadful reputation for cruelty to the female inmates there. Cruelty seemed to be a second part of her nature, gave me an overpowering sense of evil, and right away I classed her as the worst human being
burning his body. The whole of this Reich Chancellery has fallen to pieces. In the center of Hitler's study stands his chair, in a confusion of smashed woodwork, of filth and rubble.
Mi-163 is a rocket jet plane. Carries its own oxygen supply, therefore is not hampered by thinning atmosphere and high altitude.
Mi-163 was a rocket interceptor. Everything about it was new and different. Sweepback, semi-tailless, skid landing, almost like an expanded bullet. But above all, it was rocket-powered. Oh, it's dangerous to fly, extreme, because of the volatility of the fuels.
Mit einer Pipette wird eine kleine Menge T-Stoff entnommen.
Its operational record was terrible. The number of its own pilots it killed was huge, really. It could go up to a very high Mach number, but once you had passed that number, you had lost control of the aircraft. And it would tuck under. There was no way out until it made a hole in the ground.
Das Triebwerk läuft allein.
If you landed with as much as a half a cupful of fuel, the impact of landing would explode the whole thing. I'm sitting in the cockpit, ready to go. The noise is thunderous, and you are given a bit of a shake-up on the takeoff. The acceleration is unbelievable. I thought the performance was, there's only one word for it, phenomenal. I felt that I was flying in a tin coffin because your chances of bailing out were virtually nil. I took it on in the full knowledge of what the risk was. But at the end of the day, I felt a tremendous satisfaction in having beaten the odds. I think this is one of the most attractive aspects of flying, taking on danger and winning, because you know what the waits for you if you don't win.
Few months after war ended, trials of the tailless DH-108 began with Geoffrey de Havilland's flight at Woodbridge.
To achieve supersonic flight was the holy grail of aviation in my time. At the end of the war, the de Havilland team visited Germany and were fascinated by the 163. So de Havilland swept the wings back 45 degrees, up the jet engine to about 3,500 pounds thrust. We decided to prepare for an attempt on the world speed record. Their chief test pilot was Geoffrey de Havilland, the son of the founder of the company. I knew Geoffrey very well. Saw a lot of Geoffrey. To me, Geoffrey was more of the Hollywood type of test pilot. The way he was going to work up for it was to start with high-speed runs at 10,000 feet. come down 1,000 feet at a time, keep full throttle on each run. And he was running at 7 when suddenly the aircraft disintegrated. There was the first mystery. Secondly, it was found that Jeffrey had a broken neck. The cause of the disintegration was to be investigated, and this was given to Farnborough. As suddenly as it happened, after 7 seconds, it stopped. I was pretty pleased about it, I can tell you. I could see clearly that Jeffrey's head had probably violently struck the canopy, broken his neck, and that was it. When you take on a job like that, part of it is a dare, part of it is a professional challenge. Somebody done an analysis of my flying, and they say I've had 13 that might have finished up fatal. But I don't know. I think the two things have contributed to my survival. I was a stickler for preparation before a flight. There was a type of pilot who was a bit gung-ho. The great saying would be, kick the tires, light the fires, and the last one off's a sissy. Now, if you have that attitude in test flying, you are not going to last very long. And secondly, the fact I am small helped my survival. For example, I had a crash in a Vampire. If I'd been 6 feet, I'd have lost my legs. I survived purely because I was small, and I curled myself up in the cockpit.
De Havilland were developing a jet fighter, the Vampire, and there was a strong desire to operate jet aircraft from carriers.
We knew the Americans were trying to be the first to land a jet on an aircraft carrier, and it was nothing but a friendly rivalry. The sea was so rough, the carrier was moving, enough to make life difficult, certainly for the first landing. So the signal had been sent out, return to base. But I didn't get that. So I screamed overhead, and that was the first they knew I was there.
Standard under the low descent.
By the mid-60s, I was moving up the seniority ladder. It was likely that I'd get an air station. Being a good Scot, I was praying that I'd get Lossiemouth, the training ground for nuclear bombers. You finish up, and the end of my career, the Buccaneer. They were as different from that the early era as chalk from cheese. War had pushed progress along so fast, at a huge cost. Science fiction almost. At first, when I had to retire from flying, I think it was a feeling similar to a drug addict gives when he no longer can get his drugs. Withdrawal symptoms were fierce for about a year. And then I came to terms with it after a year, but it wasn't easy. One thing I learned about myself was I was prepared to give up anything to stay in test flying. It did become an obsession with me, and it was something I felt I had to do, otherwise my soul, if you like to put it that way, would never be at peace.